What's good, people? It's about that time to randomly relate, reverse wrench, no hate. So, you know that Jaron Boost Ennis just fought the other week, and basically, here's a video. Teddy Atlas, from his podcast. I think it was a cool video. I want you to hear his take, and I don't have too much to say about it because I already really said what I had to say, but I will make a few points. Let's get it.
Boots Ennis obviously comes in undefeated. I think he was the mandatory for Errol Spence prior to Errol Spence getting in a car accident. Um, it looks like that fight with Boots Ennis and Errol Spence has a good chance of getting made if Errol doesn't get in with Terrence Crawford. But I'm curious to hear what you think here because I don't think Boots Ennis, based on what I saw against Shaka John, does too well against Errol Spence, but maybe I'm wrong. I certainly don't think that Rashidi Ellis and Boots Ennis is going to be competitive, not from what I've seen from the two of those guys on Saturday. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that potential matchup as well. But Boots Ennis does what he has to do. According to the judges, he wins every single round. I think Karen Shakajan was probably a little bit better than most people thought, at least in terms of his footwork and ability. It's hard to win if you're not going to throw punches and be offensive. But he certainly could move okay. What'd you think of that one, and what'd you think of Shakajan?
First, I'm going to go to what you said. I'm going to go to that first and work my way backwards, forwards. The answer is yes and no. Ellis will have trouble with those top guys. He's going to correct a few things, but he is a fighter, so I don't leave him out because he is a fighter. He showed me that character of a fighter, but he's going to have to work a few things out. Ennis, you're wrong, in my opinion. He can fit in there with those top guys. And I'll tell you why. He's a complete package, and I'm going to go a step further. It's going to probably get a few drawers to drop right now, hearing me say this, but I was more impressed by that outing of Ennis than all of his highlight reel fights before that. And they were highlight reel fights. All those wins before that where he was blowing guys out, he was too big, too strong, too good, blowing guys out of the freaking ring. I was more impressed, and it was a one-sided fight, not exciting, but I was more impressed with that performance than every one of his wins. And they were, like I said, all the wins before that were like a Michael Jordan, the great basketball player, like a highlight reel. So dunks and flying through the air, but not really seeing the complete basketball player. And you got a chance to see the complete fighter with Ennis. He was in there with a guy that has talent, a guy that knows how to fight. He's got a big amateur background, a guy who has a terrible style, a style that nobody would want to fight. I wouldn't fight him. If I'm a manager, I ain't fighting that guy. And let me tell you, that guy,
Heard that.
Circassian, he could beat a lot of guys. He could beat, but he's kind of like in the same boat as Andre and even Shakur Stevenson in some ways, although Shakur Stevenson is going to get guys to fight him. But the most difficult thing about these guys is their styles. Yeah, they got talent, but their styles is a part of their talent. They have difficult styles. This guy, Circassian, his style is beyond difficult. It's like difficult on steroids. I mean, you can't look good with him, and he knows how to survive, and then he knows how to do enough to win sometimes if you give him a chance. But Ennis was too good for that. Ennis was too good. He would have beat 90% of the welterweight class. Yeah, I got jaws dropping. He would, I say it again, in case your ears are clogged up, because I know some of you guys, your ears get clogged up. You don't use those swabs I told you to use. You gotta use those swabs with a little alcohol. Some of you, especially my brothers and sisters across the pond. I love you, but you gotta use those swabs, sometimes. He would have beat 90%, maybe 95% of the welterweight class. This guy is really, he is a nightmare to deal with because of his style and his ability. And if he wasn't as good as he is, he would have lost this guy. And he showed me things that you couldn't see with all those highlight reel wins that he's been putting together over the last several years. he showed me poise, because those things are talents. He showed me his character. He showed me his patience. He showed me his mentality, to his understanding, where he could keep himself together when a part of him could have easily gotten so frustrated and could have went off the side of the road easily with this kind of guy. Because he wants to look good, he wants to knock the guy out, he wants to do all the thing that everyone else wants. And he might have thought he was going to do that until he got in there. But he showed me defensive responsibility, reflexes, timing, technique, all things that I saw bits and pieces of it, even on the highlight reel, but never to this dimension, never to this depth, where all of those things had to be there. He had to be a solid guy defensively. He with his offense, that he wasn't reckless, with his cerebralness, where he was able to be smart enough to figure it out, with his temperament, where he didn't lose himself like Michael Jordan used to talk about, that you let the game get away from you. You know, he didn't let that happen. He stayed within the game, within the fight, because he's a full package, emotionally, mentally, and technically, and talent-wise, pure talent-wise. So don't get down on him. Don't sell your stock in Ennis. I know that there was a sale the next day where you could have bought Ennis stock a lot cheaper. It dropped. It dropped like if it was Apple. Apple stock is very expensive. And then, if something goes wrong, they have one bad phone, boom, it's going to drop down. It's going to drop down from $1,500 a share, whatever the figure is, to maybe $800 a share. If that happens with Ennis, I'm buying. Because I'm saying it again, he impressed me more in this fight than all his fights put together before. He's the real deal. And every fighter, every great fighter, every top fighter has one of these on their resume.
Mm-hmm.
They have to.
Mm-hmm.
You need it. It's part of the process. It's part of the journey.
That was his first 12-rounder.
And it's part of what's going to make you, but it's what happened inside those 12. That's what matters.
Yeah.
And it's part of what's going to make you a better fighter. Make you ready to win a world title. Make you ready in all areas when that title comes. And now he's more ready than he ever was. Now he is. And I'm more ready to back him.
How do you like him versus Spence? What would you make the odds there if you had to put a line on that fight?
Look, Spence is... I tell you, if he fought Spence, I got Spence just a very slight favorite. Very slight. Now what people
Slight favorite.
Very slight.
And I'm going with Spence.
Spence has the...
With any of these guys.
Obviously, he's got the advantage of experience, being the champ, being there, fighting, the better fighters. He's been down this path more times as far as getting tested, as far as, sort of taking a car out on the racetrack. He's been out on the racetrack where Ennis has been he's been on side roads. He hasn't had to go on a racetrack. He's been on side roads doing these kind of street races, for the most part. And he's blowing people away in those races. Spence, of course, has, he's been to the Indianapolis 500s. And that stuff, that matters. That matters. He's been there, he's done that. He knows the answers.
He has more
to some
experience.
Questions that Ennis is just finding out those answers. He's just now starting to really find out. He thinks he's got the answers, but now he's finding out, do I really have them? Do I really have them? Where Spence already has them. And that gives you an advantage. There's a lot to be said for that advantage. In life in general. I mean, in anything. I can make that analogy with anything. You take a lawyer in a courtroom, and, you got a guy that just got out of Harvard Law School, top of his class. He's brilliant. Professors say he's the smartest guy I ever taught. And But I'm taking the experienced guy over him in a trial until he gets more experience, until he gets some of those questions answered about himself, until he goes down that road a little bit, until, you know, he gets dirtied a little bit, if you will, you know. So, same thing here. You got to give Spence the edge, but I'll tell you, that would be as close to a pick'em fight as you could get with Spence right now, unless he's fighting Crawford, of course, you know. But other than that, he separates himself from everybody, and for me, Ennis is the real deal, as I said before.
Now, let me piggyback off of what Teddy just said. Now, it's normal for people to go with the experienced guy because he's been down that road. Errol Spence was in the same shoes Jaron Ennis was in at one point in his career. And it was people telling me he couldn't beat Keith Thurman, which he never fought yet, but he couldn't beat Sean Porter. He wasn't going to beat Danny Garcia. He wasn't going to beat Kell Brook. These are the same people. Now they turn around, and now that, you know, Spence has been down that road, has proven himself, now with the up-and-coming guy, oh, he's not ready because he has a fight that people feel like he was exposed. They use that word so much. Here's the crazy thing. Even though Errol Spence has the experience, he's been there, he has 3 belts, the majority of people still think Terrence Crawford will beat him. You heard Roy Jones and all these other different people, they think Crawford is going to smoke him out his boots. Then they change their opinion. Then they say one thing, they say another. My intentions is not to come here and tell you who's going to win. I'm not even telling you about who I think would win. Like, what I'm saying is, I think Jaron Boots Ennis, like he said, is the real deal. He's ready right now. Whether he wins or lose, it's a competitive fight. And like you heard Teddy say, he give him a very slight advantage. Now, Teddy's been wrong a whole lot of times. He's been right a whole lot of times. Okay? And it's not based on what Teddy's saying, but I'm telling you this. The vast majority of people, even if they think Spence would win or think Crawford would beat him, they are saying, I give the advantage slightly. But they're clearly saying Crawford blows Spence out. The majority of the people. Who I think will win, who I want to win, has nothing to do with the fact that the fight should happen. And this is bottom line what I'm saying. So as I said in previous video, you can't sit here and tell me Jaron Boots Ennis is not ready for Errol Spence or Terrence Crawford. And you the same people that sat here and said Terrence Crawford and David Avanesian was going to be a competitive good fight. You thought Avanesian had a chance, but you don't think Boots does? What I'm noticing, you see, this is the difference between a fighter, a trainer, someone who's done both, versus just fans. Because you guys are quick to write someone off because, oh, they didn't look good that fight. I've given you guys so many examples, whether it was Tank Davis, Devin Haney, Roy Jones, different people who you guys wrote off, but then you guys turned around, and when they beat those guys that you thought were going to win, you just made up another excuse because you were angry that your prediction was wrong, and that the fighter you wanted to win lost, which is stupid. You see what this guy Karen did? You called it slick, smart boxing. And all he did was box, then he started running. It got to the point, like I said, he wasn't even trying to win. Why, when Floyd Mayweather just used lateral movement, you call it running? But I didn't hear you guys admit that this guy was running. He wasn't even trying to win. When a guy is in survival mode and he won't commit to anything, it is hard. And he would make guys look bad, like Teddy's saying, simply because his style. He doesn't commit. And you see, he could have frustrated a lot of other guys with his style. They'd have fell apart, ran after him, trying to just get wild and get lucky. Styles make fights. You guys are always saying it, right? Well, here's the thing that you guys look. You got to understand this. Terrence Crawford is not going to do what Karen did. He's going to stay there and fight. Errol Spence, you know damn well he's going to stand and fight. So he doesn't have to worry about trying to find these guys. It's a different fight. I'm not telling you Jaron Boots Ennis wins. And I'm not telling you that he can't win. I'm saying it's a necessary fight. I watched Emmanuel Augustus fight Floyd, and Floyd was careful against this guy because he was awkward. Emmanuel Augustus never became a superstar. And it's not about a popularity contest, all right? But Emmanuel Augustus, you ask anybody about Emmanuel Augustus, he was just a weird type of fighting guy. And I'm not talking about that just that drunken monk dumb shit he was doing. I'm talking just overall, he just had an awkward style that gave people problems. Look at what Floyd Mayweather became. So there's always a fight that people are going to have. I mean, Muhammad Ali got dropped by Henry Cooper, who was a good fighter. So him getting dropped by Henry Cooper, and then when he's in a position to fight a Sonny Liston some years later, you think people really thought that he was going to beat Sonny Liston? No. So, yeah, Jaron Ennis is just in a position of, I have to beat these people to show them, beat these fighters to show these people that I'm ready, I'm here. What do you guys want Jaron Boots Ennis to do? Wait for Terrence Crawford to turn 38, 39? Wait for Errol Spence to turn 38, 39? Then start to call him out? Then wouldn't you say, notice he wasn't calling them out back in the day when they was champs? Pause. So, you know, guys should be, I don't understand. Fight fans are some of the most weird fans in the world, man. Like, it's not fight fans. It's fighter fans. You should be, you know, it should make you feel good about boxing to see that you got fighters that's out there that can fight, that want to fight. I mean, I hear the complaints all year long about not getting the fights. We want to see this guy's ducking this guy. But then when the guy's calling people out, oh, he's clout chasing. Some of y'all got to grow up, man. I mean, fighters want to fight. And like I said, you just hope that once they get to that point where they're in the position of the guy that they're chasing, that they don't start playing it. But it's going to happen. Why? Because boxing is a monopoly. And it gets to the point where, like I said, their team starts talking to them, man. Look, you know, it's like when you get into a certain tax bracket, everything changes. The more money you make. This is like in boxing, we have all of these different, you know, fighters in different weight classes that, you know, we want to see certain fights happen. Then you got certain fighters, you want to see them go up in this, to, you know, and wait to go fight this guy. You're not going to get everything you want. But think about this. If not Jaron Boots Ennis, like I said before, and I don't want to hear no shit about no, oh, it's a fact, Virgil Ortiz turned down. Fuck all that dumb shit. Do you want to see Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz fight guys like Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence? Or think about it. Who else does the welterweight division have that you even fucking care to see either one of them those guys fight? You understand? Think about this. For Errol Spence, I saw a tweet. I forget the guy's name, but he's a reliable source. I forget his damn name. But he tweeted that Errol Spence and Keith Thurman are like going through, you know, trying to finalize the deal that they're going to fight at 154. Errol Spence has a special license where he's allowed to go up without having to relinquish his titles at 147 for this one fight with Keith Thurman. Okay. I don't know why, excuse me, the fight wouldn't take place at 147. And this would be another title defense under his belt, Errol Spence. But it's obviously he don't care about that. You know, and that's part of your record too, where how many title defenses you had, like all of this stuff adds up. But at least for him and Keith Thurman, it's like, well, Keith Thurman is in a position where his stock then went down considerably. He's becoming like invisible. So there's nothing. He has no belt. Okay, this is a stay busy fight. Cool. Well, if you know, for people saying Errol Spence is not coming back down, that would be stupid. Why would you have 3 belts You're in a great position right now in boxing. Why would you let your belts go just to go fight a non-champion and then not come back? And that would look like a clear duck, right? That he just didn't want to fight. Well, what did it look like when Terrence Crawford went and fought David Avanesian instead of fighting Errol Spence? What did that look like? I'm beyond all that. It's his fault. It's his fault. I don't even want to hear that dumb shit. Don't even leave stupid ass comments in the comment section telling me about who duck. We not fuck ducking. We're not talking about ducking. All right, we're not talking about no ducking shit. I'm saying, well, what would it look like if he did that, right? My whole thing with that is, for him, for Spence and Keith Thurman, okay, whatever. This fight's going to happen, but I don't really care about these two fighting each other anymore. To be honest with you, I'm getting like that with him and Crawford. Like, it's like if any of them, if they fight, they fight. They don't, they don't. But for Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford, now if you remember, it was Sean Porter who was saying he always envisioned that Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence was going to fight at 154, not 147. He was saying Crawford, but now it's him and Spence and Thurman, right? So think about it. But I said there's no belt on the line. This is just a legacy fight. Okay. Well, Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence is different because, again, it's for undisputed. Why? For this fight to take this long to make, for the very two best in the division, well, people, for this fight to not be even taken serious by either guy and looked at like, you know, I can say if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, doesn't. Because it doesn't affect me. It doesn't bother me. Personally, I don't care about none of this shit on a personal level. I love boxing, not boxers. I respect, I appreciate. That's as far as it goes. But at the end of the day, why would you not want to fight for undisputed? Why would you not want to beat another top opponent for undisputed? So all that dumb talk about them going to 154 to fight each other would be stupid. You fighting at 147 now. If this does happen, okay, and just think about this. Crawford just fought not too long ago. Okay, now Spence is getting ready to have his fight whenever they, tell us what the date is. I think they said sometime in April. Yeah, they said sometime in April. BLK Prime, if they paid Terrence Crawford $10 million to fight, if that's what he made, right? And I'm not questioning or knocking it. I don't really care. If they paid him $10 million to fight David Avanesian, okay, great. He got $10 million. If he's not going to fight a Virgil Ortiz, if he's not going to fight a Jaron Ennis, what other type of opponent are they going to give him? Who the fuck else is at 147 that you really care about him fighting? Do you want to see him fight a leftover of Errol Spence and Ugas? Do you really want to see that fight? So who else is left? This is what I said. When I said before, when Errol Spence was talking about fighting Ugas, did Aries or did Aries not say, man, if I was looking at it from what we see going on, if I was in Terrence Crawford position, I'd be doing everything in my power to try to get a fight with Keith Thurman. Yeah, we know Keith Thurman was asking for $10 million. Well, if you guys couldn't pay him that and don't feel like the fight was worth that, okay, whatever. Ain't that the price he just said? He just got to fight a fucking nobody in Avanesian. Let's just say it like it is. So at the end of the day, do they really give a fuck about legacy? Obviously not. But at the same time, do you see my point? What did I also, you see, now all of a sudden, when he fought David Avanesian, what did I say Errol Spence should do? Since he went and ran across the street to fight David Avanesian, what did I say he should do? Errol Spence should be trying to get Keith Thurman in the ring. At least he's a respectable name. But I said I would personally rather see him fight a guy like Ennis. But guess what? After Errol Spence fight Keith Thurman in April, what does that leave Terrence Crawford? So if he's going to fight, look, BLK Prime, they told you, well, Terrence Crawford said how much money he made. Okay. He did an interview and said he got half of the money and he was getting the other half the night of the fight. So he already had half his money up front. That was Terrence Crawford's words. Well, you want to know what they didn't tell you? They didn't tell you, and they told you there was 12,000 people in the building. They didn't tell you what the pay-per-view did. And I'm going to tell you why they didn't tell you that. Because that shit tanked. That's why. It flopped. If that pay-per-view sold well, here's a company that was known to be a streaming company. Now they're managing fighters. You want people to know of your success. You want people to feel like they're a part of something big. This is BLK Prime. We just took Terrence Crawford, David Avenesian as a main event on the card. And guess what? We sold X amount of pay-per-view. No. Now, you imagine that the pay-per-view did good and they're such bad businessmen that they don't have the intelligence to know that, people need to know how much this pay-per-view sold. So my point is, okay, Terrence Crawford, if he got his $10 million, well, how many times you think they're going to pay this man $10 million to fight subpar opponents? Because, okay, you're giving him $10 million, but then your pay-per-views are flopping. You guys are not pulling in the kind of money that you want. And basically, look at their next headline for their next pay-per-view. It's going to be Adrian Broner and Ivan Redcash as the main event. That's a main event? Shit, that's not even a main event on regular HBO boxing after dark when it was on all shows. Redcash and Adrian Broner as a main event. So understand what I'm saying. So how much money you gonna be dishing out to these guys to put on to satisfy them and put on a fight where the pay-per-view sales flop? Where do you think they're getting money from? They're paying them from their pockets? So if they're not putting asses in seats, if they're not drawing, if these fights are not selling, like the pay-per-view's not selling out, they're not, doing great numbers, let's see how long that 10 million shit lasts. And Terrence Crawford going to find himself in a position of, damn, man, maybe I need to go with PBC. Or some shit like that. Because nobody's going to keep fucking shelling out money to see you fight guys like David Avenesian, to see Adrian Broner fight guys like Redcash. They're not going to do that. They're not. It's common sense. So my point with that is, if he's not going to fight a guy like Boots Ennis, then who should his next fight be against? And this is why I said, I really hope, well, they said that, Boots is the mandatory. So, Terrence, so for Errol Spence, I don't see him as a sucker. Even though that was some sucker shit when he told, Terrence Crawford to go get a belt. And then chose to go and fight, stood right there and told him, Sean Porter got a belt too. I didn't like that shit. But you see, it was always something there. Because even when Sean Porter got beat by Terrence Crawford, can you explain why Errol Spence got up, shaking his head, and walked off like he was upset? I think his daddy stopped the fight too soon. Yeah. That clearly shows you he did not want him to win. Look at Evander Holyfield's face when Mike Tyson got knocked out. He was in Japan. Look at his face when he got knocked out by Buster Douglas. Holyfield looks so disappointed with it. Because he wanted Tyson. But instead he gets Buster Douglas. You see, if he'd have been sitting there like, that would have made him like a straight sucker. Like, oh, you glad Mike lost because you didn't really want to fight Mike. You understand what I'm saying? So certain things you gotta look at it. You gotta look at things for what they are, but you gotta pay attention to these things. So pretty much, as far as this goes, there's no real urgency there. And I told you guys, I'll ride with Spence. I want to see him win, regardless to who he fight. If he fights Jaron Ennis, I'm pulling for Spence to win. So use your common sense when you hear me saying Jaron Boots Ennis is ready. This is what I'm telling you. Win, lose, or draw, the fight should happen. And as I stated earlier, Mr. Errol Spence, with all the experience he has as well, they're still saying he gets whitewashed by Terrence Crawford. The majority of people. Like he's still an up-and-coming guy. They make him sound like he's in Jaron Boots situation, right? Okay, they'll sit there and point out all his flaws. And also, let's not forget, okay, you talk about rookie mistakes and all that. Well, let's not forget that Errol Spence took his eyes off this fucking opponent when he fucking dropped his mouthpiece or whatever happened and got rocked by Ugas. And he even said, yeah, I made a rookie mistake. Exactly. So you don't know what can happen in the fight. Protect yourself at all times. Remember that dumb shit Shane Mosley did? I think he might have hit Floyd a little bit lower. Something happened when they fought. He stuck his hand out and Floyd just popped him. And then he's looking at the referee with his hands up. And even the commentators are like, hey, I mean, come on, you guys here to fight. He wants to shake hands. Floyd wants to fight. Okay, rookie mistake. You guys always say it, nobody's perfect. Okay, so stop acting like Spence and Crawford are perfect, like they can't be beaten. Like I said, I'm not telling you Jaron Boots is going to win, but I'm not telling you he can't win. I think he's good enough to beat either one of them if he put it together in the ring right. And again, you guys are looking at the wrong shit. When you sit there and say, oh, look, when I'm in the gym and I see a fighter doing something that's not, like, I see something that he could do that will work out better for him, we discuss that. That's why you do film study as well of yourself, because you see what you were doing. Now look at what you were doing then. Let's look at what you're doing now. Let's see how it worked for you. And you combine things. So it's not about changing the fight all the time. It's about adding to what they already know. So when you guys just automatically shut a fighter down, oh, he ain't ready. Oh man, he ain't ready. He's over. This is amateur fucking way of thinking. You guys still don't fucking get it. You still are looking at the wrong shit. Now, like Teddy pointed out the things that he loved about what he saw. None of you guys acknowledging the things that he was doing right, and he was a complete shutout. Y'all know if Boots Ennis would have been in a position where he weren't like a majority or a split decision, I'd be saying something completely different from what I'm saying now. Only because the adversity that was in front of him, he should have been able to overcome. Okay, and on the flip side, if it would have been a close fight like that, that would just mean that, this guy Karen was fighting much better than everybody thought, like not running. He's fighting back. So then you got to look, was it that this guy's better than we thought he was? Or Boots just not as good as we thought he was? The guy wasn't trying to fight and win. Let's be real. And so, again, like I said, for the people that want to see Boots lose so bad, they're not calling this guy a runner. They're talking about he couldn't handle his footwork. He should have went to the body. Yeah, he should have jabbed to the body more. I know it's several things I could sit here and say that he could have did that would have made his night a little easier, but it's easier said than done too, because this guy was not trying to fight back. He was not trying to win. He was just trying to survive and not get knocked out. And none of you guys are saying that. All you guys are saying is Boots should have did this, Boots should have did that. But you're not pointing out those things. And that's only because you want to see him lose. But then you can go back in Terrence Crawford's career when he got dropped. You can go back in Errol Spence's career. We can go back in every fighter's career and see a fight that they had. And I'm talking while they were still in their prime, not when they were old and washed up. And you'll see that they had fights with certain guys that made them look bad. And when that shit happened, see, people forget. But when it happened, people was doing the same things. Oh, he's not ready. He's not this. He's not that. But then they go and fight the guy that you think is going to beat them, and they win. And then you look stupid because it's like, for you to guarantee something and think that, well, nah, this guy, he ain't ready. He should have been doing it. He can't handle footwork. No, he couldn't handle this guy's footwork, which turned into running, which Terrence Crawford is not going to fight him that way. Like I said, Spence is not going to fight him that way. So again, if these guys want people to look at Jaron and it's like he's overrated or he's not ready, they can't do that. You can't fight no fucking David Avanesian and say that shit. You can't fight no washed up ass Keith Thurman and say that shit. Fight him. Beat him and shut him up. The fights to still happen. And why am I campaigning on this? Simply because It's too many times in boxing where fighters get let off the hook because the fanboys are not intelligent enough to see the reality and the danger of that opponent that fighter really don't want to have to fight. You better believe if you can go back and look at every Errol Spence interview or any other fighter who was trying to make his mark and listen at what they were saying. Mr. Keith Thurman, don't duck me, son. Don't duck me, son. And he's telling Terrence Crawford he wants $10 million or no fight. Okay, well, guess what? This is what fighters start saying as they start getting older. If it's not a lot of money involved, what's the purpose? They're already good with money. The fighters who are still not good with money, they're not secured. Like, look at Derek Chisora. Now he finally got a payday decent enough for him to, I don't need to do this no more. So they're the ones who keep jumping out there. Understand my point? You know, so when you hear guys saying that, that's the point of that. What they don't want to say to you. See, Roy Jones can say it now because at his age, and he's not fighting professionally. Well, he's retired. And they always ask Roy about coming back to fight this guy, that guy, even in a Legends match. And Roy said, man, for me to put my body through what I got to go through to get in shape for a fight and all of that, my age, if they're not giving me millions of dollars, what am I doing it for? Okay? And Roy Jones is much older than Keith Thurman. But when you hear guys saying that, they got to, the understanding, look, you can say what you want. You haven't seen the best Keith Thurman yet. I'm still the best welterweight out there. But they can say all of what they want. The reality is they know they can lose. They have lost. And they know that it's a big risk. Not just for their star power, but physically. Okay? You saw 40-year-old Manny Pacquiao dominate Keith Thurman. People made excuses for Keith Thurman. All since he got married, his mind wasn't there. It was, he wasn't. Okay. He called him a 40-year-old rabbit and promised to the world ain't no way he's going to let a 40-year-old rabbit beat him. How old is Errol Spence? Early 30s? In his prime? And you think that Manny Pacquiao beat him like that, but you don't think a prime Errol Spence will beat the living fuck out of Keith Thurman? You don't think that? Now, unless Errol Spence has lost some shit that we just haven't seen it, because we seen Keith Thurman last fight with a guy that just moved up in weight, that just got, knocked out by Tank Davis. So what you think that he's going to do with Errol Spence? And if he really beats the fuck out of Keith Thurman badly, let's be real. Y'all going to start to say it's time for Keith to hang it up. But if he gets in there and struggle with him, you know what you're going to see? Errol Spence was exposed. And everything that you hear me saying about Keith Thurman right now is what you're going to hear reporters saying and people saying that Keith Thurman ain't been in the ring. Keith Thurman is no longer, relevant like he was. He's a journeyman because he hasn't done anything since he's lost to Pacquiao. Comeback fight, win, disappear. He's been out the ring too long, too much inactivity. Any real fighter knows this shit. Any real trainer knows this shit. So when they say they like Keith Thurman and all, they're giving them respect because of their status and what they've accomplished. But you can't go by what somebody did way back when. You got to go by what they show you lately. And Keith Thurman is not showing any hunger. So I don't care if it's Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Keith Thurman, whoever. All of this, I want to fight 3-4 times a year. Okay, no, you don't want to fight 3-4 times a year. Because if you asking for more money to get a fight, especially a legacy fight, what's stopping you other than yourself? There's challenges out there. Jaron Boots, they just want to fight you. So why are these guys turning fights down? Realistically, I'm going to tell you right now. Financially, where Errol Spence is, his status in the sport, he's going to avoid Boots Ennis. I'm telling you this. Terrence Crawford is going to avoid Boots Ennis. It's going to take him to be mandatory. Okay, not just #1 contender, but mandatory for either one of their belts for them to fight him. They don't want to risk it against him because for them, this won't be seen so much as a legacy fight against Boots until Boots blow up. And then let's say if he fought them and then beat either one of them now. But let's say he becomes a mega star in doing that. They'll look back and say when he fought, when Boots Ennis and Terrence Crawford fought, or when he fought Spence, and adding all that to his highlight reel, that's when that fight would be appreciated more as a legacy fight. He just doesn't have the name right now. And yes, every fighter has something to work on. Fuck. You still hear damn Spence talk about he got to, work on the defense sometimes. He too anxious to go land a shot. So all of them. And yeah, technically, all around, technically, Terrence Crawford is more technical than Errol Spence. But you heard me say in the past, that doesn't mean he win because he's more technical. But we'll see. So I'm not telling you Jaron Boots Ennis will beat them. Again, I'm saying it for the third or fourth time. And I'm not telling you he's not going to beat them. But these are fights that the fight fans should want to see. The fighter fans don't. Because deep down inside, that heart is, nah, that dude is a threat. And if you don't think he's a threat, in the immortal words of Roger Mayweather, you don't know shit about boxing. Talk to me in the comment section. Never fall in love with lies. Remember, the truth brings hate out of people, and I will catch y'all on the next video.